What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Isadora, her story, and why it's so good, why she's a really good character. Now, when this game came out, right, the game came and went, and there's a lot of talk on characters like Sebastian, right? A lot of the companions, the Sebastians and the Poppies of the world, right? You have the villains, and I even had some videos on Ranrock and Rookwood and what worked with them and what didn't work. I think those as villains were some of the weaker elements of the game, but something I glossed over, and I actually think largely the community has glossed over, maybe because of spoiler purposes, right, is Isadora, and it's the flashbacks, right, of the whole kind of story of the ancient times, and I think it did an incredibly good job. If anything, I actually kind of believe it made people think, well, why couldn't that have been, right? Like, I mean, it did have influence, absolutely, and even like a Rookwood kind of descendants and all that, right? There was some stuff that came out from it, but ultimately, if you could have done something where you brought Isadora in, and ultimately when you're playing through the game, it's like, well, we don't know exactly how this is ending, right? Like, what happens to Isadora? How far bad, I guess, does she go? How much into the dark side does she kind of succumb to before somebody either snaps her out of it or kills her or she kills other people, whatever happens? There's all these questions as the game's going, and then, the ending of her story is, well, she dies. And then obviously that connects, and I do like the connection, the idea that, well, you can, I guess, be basically a modern day Isadora. You can learn from her mistakes. Even if you do, even like in the choices at the end, you kind of want to do the same thing. You can still do it for a more righteous reason where you're like, well, look, I know where she messed up and I'm not going to do the same thing she did. So I don't think like it all went to waste. I don't think like they dropped the ball completely, or even I would say maybe the phrase dropping the ball maybe is too harsh, because ultimately this is 15, 20 minutes of flashback scenes. It's telling the story of, her when she's just a kid all the way till when she becomes extremely, extremely powerful, and then she has to be, taken out. And I love it. I think it's a very well-paced story. It's got enough time to kind of show her descent. It's got, because multiple eras of her life, basically, and also multiple eras of her getting more and more into, like, that dark side, right? Kind of falling for, not necessarily lies, but what she believes she's doing, right, for, like, a righteous reason. She believes it more and more. And it first kind of starts where it's not too big of a deal, right? You understand why she wants to help her father. It's actually a very, like, morally, I would say, good thing. And you're like, okay, I get this. And then it just keeps going. Now, it does reach a point where it's like, because she's taking, the darkness, the pain, the hurt from these people, she's basically making them hollow. They have no emotion. It comes to a point where it's like, she does become evil, where it's like she's so corrupted that she can't even see that, yeah, she's helping them to a degree, but she's also making anybody, like, basically not humans anymore. So, it reaches that point, but beyond that, and I mean, that's probably going to happen for a lot of villains in this game. I'll tell you one thing, and I saw this, I was looking, how many people have talked about Isadora, what's kind of the word on the street of her on YouTube. Number one, I think people really do like her and the story, but maybe not, like, sympathize with her all too much, but she's a well-crafted character. So a lot of people were not expecting her to just get blasted by Avada Kedavra, right? They kind of thought that it'd be almost like a three-way fight, and they would all, like, join their wands into, like, one beam, and that beam would beat her. There was a lot of joking comments of, he just kind of swooped in and he just, AK'd her and eliminated her. I liked it. I mean, it's a dark and it's kind of a depressing story, because this was a girl that was kind of brought up by these people. She was taught, she was led on this path by them, right? Now, she took, like, a left turn when they probably wanted her to take a right turn, but she was influenced, at least in the start, by these individuals and by one in particular. And, from her point of view, they kind of backstabbed her a little bit, right? But again, obviously it's because she kind of went in a different path. And by the way, another part of this, the whole connection of her story and all that leading into the modern day, right? Modern day times looking back. I like Sebastian's story. Sebastian's story is easily the best part of the entire game. In my opinion, it's deep, it's complex. It's, there's a lot of things in his story that's not even in the main story, and it's also not with the other companions, right? He gets, like, a large advantage. But I was thinking this as I was playing the game. I've seen people say this even in the comments to some of these Isadora videos I've seen online. It's so obvious that there's something to compare between him and his family and his desire to basically make things right and solve problems to hers. Like it's very, very much parallel, and it actually, I would say, runs more in line with Sebastian for the majority of it than it runs in line with you. In fact, Sebastian, because he's part of some of these main missions, and he either sees these things or he's told some of these things from you, he feels like, number one, he's part of the main story, Sebastian, right? And number two, it's like, well, how much does he actually connect? Because at the end of the day, he really doesn't. It's almost like a happy coincidence that you're kind of learning life lessons from what she did back in the day, and then you can look at Sebastian and say, well, look, I get it. Like, we're seeing a parallel of why you would do something like this, but at the end of the day, it's probably the wrong, decisions, wrong choices. It's just so in your face, I think in a good way, because it's almost like it's supposed to be. And then they kind of just like cut it, right? We talked about that when we talked about Sebastian and the ending. It just really felt like there was one more step needed to be taken with Sebastian that they set up themselves, and they just never did it. So, I mean, if I'm going to point out like a weakness, I guess that's the weakness, but that's not really Isadora's problem, right? I really think she's a great character. I was thinking like, hey, ranking these characters in my head, again, a lot of people do come up with the companions. The companions are solid characters, especially Sebastian, obviously a lot of people like. There's some things to like about other characters, but really, I think Isadora really shines. She's a character, you immediately kind of remember. You remember her story. It's simplistic. It's kind of a cliche-like tale, right? Like doing something. She thinks she's doing something for like a grand purpose. She's originally doing it just to help, a loved one, her father. She just wants to take away his pain. She has the ability to do so. She's kind of steered in that direction in the first place, and then she takes it too far. We've seen it be done before, but also you have to remember, I guess one final thing to throw out, this was so, at least to me, kind of unexpected. Like, going into the game, I didn't know we'd have such an impact of like an older tale, like watching these flashbacks over and over and having that be a story and having it connect to the main story. I don't know how many people like thought, like there was the Merlin theories and you could maybe do flashbacks with that, but I don't really think that this was something people thought they would play around with. So I think that kind of gives it an added bonus. It was kind of unexpected in a good way. It kind of caught people by surprise, and then it became like a very integral part of the game, and I think they did it well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.